I was 16 years old, strapped to a gurney and bleeding out, when my mother looked at me through a phone screen and refused to sign the paper that would save my life. The doctor told me I had minutes left, not hours, and he needed parental consent to operate immediately. But when the nurse got my mother on FaceTime, she was lounging at a luxury spa, my younger sister smirking right beside her. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sighed, bored, and said, "If he expires, send me a notification." I simply do not have time for administrative nonsense right now. I went under anesthesia with those words echoing in my head. 18 days later, I woke up with metal pins in my jaw, a ventilator tube down my throat, and a chart at the foot of my bed that carried a shocking update. It read, "Primary legal guardian," and the name printed underneath it wasn't hers. But before I reveal who stepped in when the woman who gave birth to me walked away, I need to know you're with me. Drop a hi in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. Knowing someone is actually listening keeps the silence from taking over. And if you've ever felt like the person nobody wanted, hit subscribe and stay here. This isn't just a story about a car wreck. It's a story about who caught me when I was already being erased. My name is Jet Marlo, and this is how I lost my family to find a real one. People assume that growing up in Montecito means you don't bleed like everyone else. They see the gated driveways, the private academies, the luxury sedan at 16. But nobody asks what it feels like to break bread with people who discuss you as if you were a ghost in the room. I was 16 when I finally understood I wasn't in the family portrait anymore. Not metaphorically dash, literally dot. My name is Jet Marlo, and the erasure started right here. We were seated for dinner in a house that felt more like a museum exhibit than a home. Marble floors, crystal goblets. Grant sat at the head, my mother Marisol opposite him, and Brenly to my right, documenting every second for her social media feed. I occupied the corner seat, the unused spot, like a piece of staging furniture someone forgot to put in storage. We were eating poached salmon, a dish I despised, plated with geometric precision, as if it had an aesthetic inspection before it could be eaten. Marisol discussed her upcoming retreat in Ojai and a charity gala she was chairing for ocean conservation. Grant interrupted with news about his latest architectural project, some eco-mansion in Big Sur. Brimley giggled, twirling a lock of hair, bragging that her latest upload had hit 12,000 likes in under an hour. No one directed a question at me. I was excluded from the dialogue. I was a placeholder in their perfect tableau. Then the reality hit harder. Marisol answered a call on speakerphone. It was another mother from Brimley's academy. "Oh, absolutely," she said, using that fabricated warmth she reserved for people she needed favors from. "Grant and I are thriving. Brinley is flourishing. And the older one is still occupying space for now." She never uttered my name, not once, the older one. As if I were a phase she hadn't quite grown out of yet. After dinner, I withdrew to my bedroom, which wasn't upstairs with the ocean views like Brinley's, but tucked in the service wing near the utility closet. When we moved in, they claimed it was temporary. That was over a year ago. I went searching for a spare cable, ended up prying open a storage cabinet, and discovered a shoebox full of printed photos, except I wasn't in any of them. Snapshot after snapshot, Marisol posing in vineyards, Grant beaming beside her, Brimley in designer dresses with balloons and cakes, and matching mother-daughter spa robes. There was one of me cropped clumsily at the edge of a Thanksgiving portrait, only half my face showing. Another labeled family vacation. Maui didn't feature me at all. There was also a manila envelope stamped confidential, health policy. It had my name on it. I didn't open it. I don't know why. Perhaps because deep down, I already knew I wouldn't like what I found inside. At school, Everyone assumed I was fine. Kids in this zip code don't get empathy. If you live behind a security gate, they think your life is solved. But the truth was, the gate just kept the misery looking pristine. Brinley would pass me in the corridor like we were strangers. Her clique whispered about the Ojai trip, the detox weekend she and Marisol had booked. She told them it's strictly a girls' trip. Mom says we need to unplug. No phones, no drama. He was never part of the itinerary. The only place I could breathe was Ventura. Every few weekends, I'd make the drive down to visit my grandfather, Warren Alvarez, retired sheriff, part-time angler, the only man who ever looked me in the eyes and asked if I was okay and actually waited for the answer. His bungalow smelled of sea salt and dark roast. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like mine. We didn't discuss emotions. He handed me a sports drink, pointed at the workbench, and taught me how to patch a tire. That was his language for saying he saw me. "You making it to the Easter fish fry?" he asked, sliding a flyer across the table with a grin. "Yeah," I said, forcing a casual tone. "I'll be there early to help set up." On the drive back, a text from Marisol buzzed through. "Don't make this week difficult for me. I'm swamped." She didn't ask how I was. She never did. I stared at the screen, a strange chill settling in my gut. Easter was approaching, and something in my instincts told me it wasn't just about brunch and pastel decor this year. Something was being orchestrated, and I wasn't going to like the destination. The week prior to Easter, the atmosphere in the house transformed. It wasn't dramatic. It was silent, calculated, like everyone knew a secret I didn't, and they were rehearsing lines for a play I hadn't been cast in. I arrived home one afternoon and entered through the service door. Marisol and Grant were in the kitchen. They didn't hear me enter. Grant was pouring a drink. Marisol stood by the glass wall, her phone face down on the island. "I spoke to Dr. Fenley," Grant said. "He recommends a residential facility. Structured environments are more effective for behavioral stabilization." Marisol sighed. "I just want it resolved before Easter, cleanly, no scenes. There's still paperwork. We will get it finalized. I've already contacted Ridgeview." I froze. My bag hung heavy on my shoulder, my heart skipping a chaotic beat. Residential, behavioral, paperwork. Before Easter, they were scheming to send me away. And soon, that night, I waited until the house was dark. I crept into Grant's study pretending to look for my charger, but went straight to the drawer where he filed essential documents. It was ajar, careless. There was a file labeled Household Assets and Insurance. I flipped through it rapidly, fingers trembling. Marisol, Grant, Brinley. Their names were on every primary beneficiary line. My name wasn't absent, but it wasn't with theirs. It was tucked in the back, marked prior dependent with a note. Transition plan pending. I snapped a photo of the page and shut the folder before I could be sick. The next morning, Marisol drove me to school. Just the two of us in the Rover. The silence was deafening. "Easter is significant this year," she said abruptly. "Many people will be attending. I need things to go seamlessly." I said nothing. "There's also a new opportunity for you. After Easter. A change of scenery, structure, support." "You mean shipping me off?" I asked, watching her profile. Her composed expression faltered for a second. "You always assume the darkest intent." "I'm trying to assist you." "No, you are trying to make me invisible." She didn't reply. She just turned up the radio and pretended. The exchange hadn't occurred. That weekend, I drove to Ventura. I wanted to tell Warren everything, but the words wouldn't come. I didn't want to sound paranoid. I didn't want him to worry. "You good?" he asked, handing me a water bottle like clockwork. Hesitated. "Just school stress?" He didn't press, just nodded and said, If you ever need assistance, real assistance, call this man. He handed me a business card. Elliot Crane, juvenile law specialist. I pocketed it and cracked a joke, but it didn't feel humorous back in Montecito. I walked past the lounge and saw Marisol's tablet lighting up with alerts. One caught my vision, Ojai Valley spa confirmation. Full day, mother-daughter reset, non-refundable. No device usage during session. It was booked for Easter Sunday. My heart hammered. That couldn't be accidental. If something happened, if I needed aid, there would be no way to reach them. They had engineered this. The night before Easter, I was packing a duffel to stay at Warren's when Brinley knocked. She didn't enter, just leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "Just so you're aware," she said, "after tomorrow, everything becomes simpler for all of us." "What the hell does that mean?" She smirked. "It means you aren't part of this family anymore. And honestly, you never were." Then she walked away like she hadn't just lit a fuse and tossed it into my life. I stood there staring at the framed photo in the hall. Marisol, Grant Brinley, smiling in front of a holiday tree. My frame was broken and absent from the shelf below. Tomorrow was Easter, and I had no clue that the crash wasn't just approaching, it had already started. I arrived in Ventura just before noon, earlier than requested. The yard smelled of ocean air and charcoal residue from last summer, and Warren was already out there pulling chairs from the shed. I helped him arrange the banquet table and hang the lights, trying to pretend this was just another barbecue, just another holiday. "Here," he said, handing me a crisply folded shirt, pale blue. "Wear this today. Suits you." It wasn't new, not exactly. It was one of Dad's old shirts, my biological father, the one Warren had cleaned, pressed, and preserved. I ran my thumb along the collar, unsure how to respond. "Thanks," I murmured, and he just nodded. The way he did when a gesture meant more than words. By 2:00, the yard was packed. Cousins, uncles, aunts I barely knew but who still hugged me too tight and asked too many questions. There were deviled eggs, grilled corn. Someone brought tri-tip from that spot off the highway. It felt genuinely safe. For once, I wasn't background static. Then came the perfect storm. Marisol arrived like she was walking a red carpet. Pristine white dress, not a crease in sight. Grant parked the Tesla right against the curb like he owned the street. Brinley exited last, recording on her phone, spinning in the sunlight. They didn't bring food, didn't bring drinks. They brought their presence. That was sufficient in their minds. Marisol air-kissed an aunt she hadn't seen in months and loudly praised the centerpieces. Grant began discussing business with a cousin like he'd rehearsed his pitch. Brinley just kept filming. I walked over to greet them, and Marisol turned to a family friend. "This is Jet," she said. "Not my son, just the name." Then she smiled and pivoted away before I could react. I backed off, grabbed a soda, and headed for the side yard. I needed space. That's when I heard her. Marisol's voice was low but distinct. "Yes, just confirming tomorrow." "Full day." "Yes, strictly the two of us. No interruptions, no calls, no paperwork." "It is our detox day." She laughed, a smooth, self-satisfied sound. "It has been a long time coming. Just mother and daughter." Absolute silence. I froze. Brinley's voice chimed in. "Finally, no boys, no drama, just us." My stomach plummeted. It wasn't the words. It was the ease with which they spoke them. How effortlessly I had been scrubbed from their definition of family. I don't know how long I stood there before I returned to the party. Warren intercepted me halfway across the grass. "You okay?" I nodded too quickly. "Just a headache." He didn't believe me, but he didn't pry. I sank into my chair and tried to eat, but everything tasted like ashdot later. One of my mom's cousins pulled me aside by the grill. She was sipping tea and making small talk when she dropped it. So I heard you're heading into a new situation after this. Your mom mentioned a program is lined up. I stared at her. What kind of program? She shrugged. Something structured. Good for focus and discipline. She made it sound like a scholarship. I walked away before I said something destructive. By sunset, I had reached my limit. The warmth had evaporated. The Ventura breeze didn't feel protective anymore. It just felt like the last thing I was permitted to hold on to. I told Warren I was leaving early. You sure? He asked. Yeah, just exhausted. He handed me the keys to the old Civic I'd bought with my savings. Drive carefully. Roads get slick if that rain moves in. Text me upon arrival. I nodded. I will. Brinley passed me near the gate, all lip gloss and arrogance. She leaned in just close enough to whisper, Mom is unavailable all day tomorrow. Whatever happens, do not call. I stared at her stunned, but she didn't pause. Just kept walking like she hadn't said anything cruel. I slid into the driver's seat, turned the ignition. The scent of barbecue still clung to my jacket. I didn't look back as I pulled out, but the wind had intensified and the sky was darkening. As I emerged onto the freeway, I kept replaying Warren's voice, text me upon arrival, and Brinley's voice, do not call. Two conflicting orders. One meant protection, the other meant erasure, and I still hadn't decided whose instruction I would follow. The rain hit faster than predicted. By the time I passed the first exit, the windshield was a chaotic blur of water and lights. The wipers were on max, but they couldn't clear the glass fast enough. Everything looked smeared, like I was driving through a watercolor painting someone had wept over. I glanced at my phone in the console. I typed a quick draft to Warren, heading back. All good. Then I stared at it. What if he called? What if he heard the tremor in my voice? I deleted the text and shoved the phone into the glove compartment. I didn't want him to worry. I didn't want him to stop me. I told myself, just get home. Sleep it off. Pretend today didn't exist. The road curved through a low valley and water pooled in the depths. I slowed down. I wasn't being reckless. I remembered Warren's lesson. Drive slow in the rain. I checked the dash just under the limit. That's when the headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. Blinding close, way too close. A black SUV riding my bumper. Their high beams flashed once, twice, demanding I speed up, but I didn't. The SUV didn't pass. It stayed right there, inching. Closer, lights bouncing inside my cabin like searchlights. I gripped the wheel tighter, heart pounding in my ears. Then I saw it, a decal on their windshield. Something like a prep school crest or a private club logo. My stomach dropped. It looked familiar. One of those exclusive spots Brinley always tagged. I didn't have time to process it. Up ahead, a semi-truck in the oncoming lane hydroplaned. I watched it start to fishtail slow at first, then violently fast. Its trailer swung across the median like a scythe. I swerved. Everything went white. Then sound detonated. Metal, glass, something ripping apart. I felt the seatbelt lock across my chest like a vice. The world spun. My arms went numb. My head cracked against something hard. In silence, and then the noise returned. Sirens. Someone shouting. A piercing light above me. A voice demanding, Kid, can you hear me? Stay with us. I couldn't speak. I tried. Nothing emerged. My entire body felt encased in wet cement. Hands pulled at my jacket. Someone was searching my pockets. My wallet was on the floorboard, open. My student ID, a folded business card, the one Warren gave me. I saw a paramedic grab it, glance at it, then stuff it into my coat pocket like it was trash. But it was everything. They strapped me to a board, hoisted me into the ambulance. I could hear their comes, name Jet Marlo, someone muttered. No paperwork, ID says Wexler. What? That's not what he said. That's what is in the system, muffled voices. Then one of them, Insurance is flagged. We need to verify eligibility. Then a pause. We don't have authorization. Family contact. Another pause. Mother's unavailable. No calls allowed during treatment. Listed under do not disturb. No other guardian listed. I tried to move, tried to vocalize, nothing. The sirens screamed louder, the lights grew harsher. I heard the doctor. As the doors swung open at the A bay, get him in now. We are losing the window. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say I wasn't alone, that someone was waiting for me, that I mattered to someone. But all I could think about was the message I never sent, heading back. All good. It would have been a lie, but at least he would have known I tried. Don't remember the transport. I don't remember the stereo lights or the metallic clatter of the gurney wheels on tile. What I remember is pain blooming inside me like a living ping, clawing upward from my abdomen to my ribs before it all dissolved into a void. Later they told me it was internal hemorrhage, a ruptured spleen, possible cerebral edema, contusions, fractured ribs, a shattered collarbone. It sounded like a list someone might read in a deposition. Not injuries, but evidence. What I didn't know, what no one knew yet, was how much of the next hour would depend on a single FaceTime call. The surgeon required a signature. I was 16, unconscious, legally a minor, and the woman listed on the hospital records as my guardian was Marisol Wexler. A nurse named Corinne accessed the system. She frowned as she clicked through the contact files, her eyes catching an anomaly. That's odd, she whispered to a colleague. No secondary emergency contact. Just her, no grandfather, no extended kin. Another nurse helped her mine the records. Deeper. Buried under layers of form fields and quiet edits was Warren Alvarez listed under other contacts not flagged for emergency communication. The implication was brutal. Someone had gone in and reordered the priorities. The one man who would have dismantled the world to save me had been shoved to the bottom of the digital pile. They had no choice. They dialed the number listed for Marisol. The screen lit up with golden ambience and soft instrumental music. It looked like a commercial. Marisol was reclined on a plush therapy bed, white robe, hair wrapped in a towel, some kind of gold facial mask half set on her skin. Brinley was next to her, grinning like she was in paradise, phone in hand, already mid-selfie. Mrs. Wexler, the surgeon said, keeping his voice steady. Your son is in critical condition following a vehicle collision. He has internal bleeding and potential brain trauma. We need emergency authorization to proceed with surgery. Marisol blinked slowly. Wait, Jet? The nurse confirmed Dot. She didn't even sit up. She just waved one manicured hand dismissively. If he expires, let me know. I do not have time for paperwork. I wish that sentence was fiction. It wasn't. Brinley snorted, held up her phone, and snapped a picture of the FaceTime screen. Me, unconscious, blood on my face, tubes down my throat. She giggled like she had just won a wager. The nurse froze, her hand trembling as she lowered the tablet. A third nurse in the background muttered, "Save the call log. Record everything." Another doctor stepped into the frame and tried again. Mrs. Wexler, you understand this is a legal matter. He is a minor. Marisol exhaled, irritated. Fine. Call his grandfather, Warren Alvarez. He will sign whatever. I am finished here. Then she terminated the call. That's when things accelerated. The E-team located Warren's name in the archive list and dialed. He picked up on the second ring. He didn't ask for specifics. He didn't ask how it happened. The second he heard my name and the word critical, he was moving. Out the door, through the rain, keys in hand. He arrived at the hospital, soaked from head to toe, shoulders set like he was walking back into a combat zone. I am Warren Alvarez, he told the intake desk. Where is he? They took him straight to ICU. In a side corridor, they handed him the clipboard. Consent for surgery, emergency decision-making authority, financial responsibility should it come to that. He didn't hesitate. Signed every line. Fast, neat, decisive. When he entered the prep room, I was already half sedated. Still, they gave him 30 seconds. He stepped to the rail of the bed, took my cold hand, and whispered, "I am here, kid. I have you. You are not alone." Then the doors swung shut behind him, and I disappeared into the bright silence of the OR. What no one knew, not the doctors, not even Warren, was that while they were fighting to keep me breathing, Grant Wexler was already on the phone. Not to check on me, but to his wealth manager. He wanted a note on the insurance file. No financial liability from this party. All medical authorization falls to Marisol. No media contact, no signatures, no paper trail. Let Marisol handle the debris. Let the kid survive or not. Just keep the Wexler name clean. That's how they operated. As if I was a scandal waiting to break. Not a boy, not a son. Just the liability being managed by the time the surgery commenced. The hospital was already updating my chart. An internal note flagged by the risk management team stated, "Current guardian declined life-saving intervention." Alternative party signed under emergency clause, and deep inside the server, a new line was generated. Under legal guardian, the cursor blinked and then typed, "Warren Alvarez." The ICU was too quiet. Monitors chirped, machines hissed, but everything felt distant, like sound filtering through deep water. Warren never left. He sat in the rigid chair beside my bed, jacket slung over the armrest, one hand always resting on my forearm. If a nurse so much as looked at my vitals, he was already asking questions. What is his oxygen saturation? Why did the heart rate spike just now? He wasn't just my grandfather anymore. He was my perimeter defense dot by the second day. He'd already demanded printed copies of every record the hospital held, especially the FaceTime video. He had worked homicide before retiring. He knew how institutions buried mistakes, and he knew how to ensure nothing got deleted. He had them burn the audio to a drive, had the call log notarized. A risk management rep from the hospital met with him that afternoon. "There is sufficient evidence," she said carefully, "to categorize this as medical neglect. The fact that the legal guardian declined urgent intervention for a minor places us in mandatory reporting territory." She paused, then added, "We need to know if you want to proceed with an emergency transfer of guardianship while the patient is still unconscious for his safety." Warren didn't even blink. "File it." By that evening, Elliot Crane was standing in the IQ hallway, a stack of documents under his arm, tie loosened, eyes predatory. He reviewed everything. The call transcript, the nurse statements, the image of Brinley's smirking face over my broken body. "This won't stay quiet," he said. He wasn't wrong. By morning, a staff member told Warren that a version of Brinley's screenshot had already circulated through group chats at her prep school. Kids were sharing it in whispers, captioned with things like, "Guess he finally crashed. Elliot didn't just see a cruel joke. He saw ammunition. This is actionable," he said. Defamation, emotional abuse, targeted harassment. It helps build the case that Montecito was not a safe environment, especially with a minor involved. Warren nodded. "Do whatever is necessary." The next day, Elliot received a call not from Marisol, not from Grant, but from a law firm that smelled suspiciously like damage control. They weren't asking for forgiveness. They were purchasing silence. "Settle this quietly," the voice on the phone suggested. "Let's not make this messier than it already is." Elliot smiled like a Volf. "Put that offer in writing." By that afternoon, he was standing at the security gate of the Wexler estate in Montecito with a court officer and a thick envelope. Emergency guardianship petition, formal complaint, notice of pending medical expenses, The door opened. Marisol stood there in a cashmere dress, face tight. "You cannot be serious," she said. "I am," Elliot replied. "Have a good evening." Behind her, Brinley burst into tears. "I posted it by accident," Warren later told the nurse. She screamed. "Now it's my fault for being in the hospital." The court fast-tracked the hearing. A minor imperil, medical negligence, social fallout. Even the system couldn't ignore the optics. By the end of the day, Elliot had everything aligned. Witnesses. Call logs. My new medical chart with Warren listed in bold at the top as primary decision maker. I was still unconscious when the change was entered officially. Somewhere across town, Marisol sat in her curated living room, staring at the court order that proved she'd lost something she didn't even try to keep. And in the ICU, Warren leaned forward, resting both hands on the bed rail. "I've got you, kid," he whispered, and this time the law backs me up. The first thing I saw when I woke up wasn't a ceiling tile. It wasn't my grandfather's face or the blur of a nurse or even the blinding light of ICU lights. It was a clipboard. More specifically, a chart clipped to the foot of my hospital bed. At the bottom, in bold capital letters, a phrase I couldn't process fast enough, new legal guardian. And right underneath that, a name, Warren Alvarez. My throat burned. My ribs screamed. Something was in my nose, my arms, and I was pretty sure I couldn't feel my left leg. But all of that was background noise to that single line of text. Something had shifted drastically while I'd been asleep. Someone had made a decision that saved my life. And it wasn't the woman who gave birth to me. "Hey," a hoarse voice said. From beside me, I turned my head slowly. My grandfather sat in the stiff hospital chair, his elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he'd been praying or bargaining with a god that didn't listen much. His eyes were bloodshot and rimmed in red. "You're awake," he breathed, then pressed the call button for the nurse without taking his gaze off me. "You are safe now, Jet." I wanted to speak, but my lips barely moved. My voice cracked like dry parchment. Still, I managed 2 words. "What happened?" He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't baby me. Didn't pretend the truth could wait. "You were in a collision on the 101 driving back from Ventura. It was bad. A semi jackknifed in the rain." He paused. "You almost didn't make it." I closed my eyes and the memories flickered. Metal screaming, glass raining down, a woman's voice on the phone saying, "Do not call me tomorrow. We will be at the spa all day." He saw something in my expression shift. "You remember something?" "I remember leaving the cookout." He nodded slowly. "That's where it started." He told me everything else. That the trauma team needed immediate consent to operate. That the hospital called Marisol because she was still listed as my legal guardian. That she was in Ojai with Brinley mid-facial. And when asked for permission to save my life, she said, "If he expires, let me know. I do not have time for paperwork." Then Brinley laughed, took a screenshot of me on a stretcher, bleeding. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My heart wasn't breaking. It was going numb. Like someone had switched off the pain just long enough for me to float above it, observing. Hospital staff recorded the call, Warren added. They flagged it for risk management. That was enough for Elliot, our attorney, to petition for emergency guardianship transfer. The court agreed. I signed the papers. I turned my head toward the chart again. "So it's real?" "It's real," he said. "You are not going back there." I felt that sentence settle in my chest like the first breath of clean air after a fire. I wasn't going back to Montecito. Not to her dot later that afternoon, a nurse came in to update my file. She confirmed my name, date of birth, and mentioned something about how I'd originally been logged under the Wexler. Name Grant's last name because of an insurance record mismatch. That name again, Wexler, a name I never chose. I remembered that locked drawer in Grant's office, the insurance forms, the one with my name blacked out, replaced with something cleaner, more convenient. They had been planning something. I knew that now. It wasn't paranoia. It was strategy. Elliot visited that evening. He asked one question. Jet, do you want to return to your mother's home? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just shook my head and said, that is not my home. He nodded. That is all I need. The next morning, the hospital buzzed, not with alarms, but with energy. PR reps pacing the corridor. A man in a crisp blazer asking for a quiet conversation on behalf of the Wexlers. He offered a donation to the hospital if the situation could be handled with grace. Elliot told him to get lost. In more elegant legal terms, I watched it all from my room. Knowing it was the storm they were trying to contain Dot, then came the emergency hearing. Elliot wheeled me into the courtroom. Warren walked beside me. I hadn't left IQ for more than 5 minutes in 2 weeks. And now I was sitting in front of a judge in Santa Barbara with Envy still taped to my hand. Marisol showed up looking exactly how I expected, expensive, immaculate, performative. She didn't look at me once. Brinley clung to her like a guilty shadow. Makeup perfect, lips tight. The judge asked for the facts. The court clerk played the recording. Marisol's voice filled the courtroom, breezy and cold. If he expires, let me know. I do not have time for paperwork. Then Brinley's laugh. The room went deadly still. Nurse Hong testified. So did Dr. Kaplan. Elliot presented the call log, the missed surgery window, the screenshots, every digital breadcrumb, every omission from the hospital contact file. They tried to erase my grandfather from the records, erase any backup plan that didn't involve them. They removed protective contacts, shifted insurance coverage, changed his last name in some systems. It was structured neglect, Elliot said. By design. The judge took it all in, then issued the ruling. Temporary guardianship officially transferred to Warren Alvarez. All rights of parental medical decision-making revoked from Marisol Wexler. I left that courtroom with more pain than I walked in with. But for the first time in my life, it wasn't pain someone else had the right to ignore. And outside, as the cameras started rolling, I heard Elliot whisper to Warren, they will either try to play victims or drag this out in court, but this isn't over. I looked at him. It wasn't fear in his voice. It was readiness. Recovery wasn't a montage. It wasn't sunshine through windows or inspirational music. It was me in a back bedroom at Warren's house in Ventura, learning how to stand on one leg while a nurse held my elbow. It was the sound of my own breath as I tried to put weight on a foot that still didn't feel like mine. It was dropping a spoon twice during breakfast because my fingers shook too hard to grip anything, but it was also progress. Warren cleared out his old office to make space for my recovery gear. He didn't hover. He didn't pity me. He just brought me water and listened when I cursed at the pain. I started therapy with Dr. Marishaw. She didn't ask about the crash. Not at first. She asked me what it felt like to sit in silence in a house where people only looked at you when they needed something. I told her it felt like being erased. We worked from there. Then the text started. Marisol sent one first. I know you are hurting. So am I wish you could see the full picture. Then I have lost everything, Jet. Don't take away what little I have left. I didn't respond. I showed Elliot instead. He told me to keep every message. They aren't apologies, he said. They are optics. A week later, news broke that Grant had filed for divorce. Irreconcilable differences, public reputation, financial preservation. He cut ties fast and clean, and Marisol was suddenly alone. Brinley's school issued a statement about disciplinary review. Her scholarship applications disappeared overnight. Montecito wasn't a fortress. It was a house of cards. The final custody hearing came 6 weeks later. I walked into that courtroom on crutches, not because I wanted pity, but because I refused to be wheeled anywhere again. I testified last. I told the judge the truth. That night, I said, when the doctor said I needed surgery and my mom declined, something in me died before my body ever could. I wasn't her son. I was a file, a liability, something to manage. I looked at Mary Sullivan. She was crying or trying to. I am not asking for money. I am not even asking for an apology. I am asking to be free, to stay where I am safe. I looked at Warren. That is with him. The judge ruled quickly. Parental rights permanently terminated for Marisol Wexler. Full. Legal guardianship transferred to Warren Alvarez. The court authorized adoption proceedings. The rest happened fast. A lien on the Montecito property. Hospital bills filed through civil court. Marisol's employer dropped her. Brinley transferred. Schools. Grant remarried someone younger and even more vanilla. I signed my adoption papers at age 17. I didn't change my name, but I changed everything else. I finished high school, enrolled in a state college near Ventura, studied social work. Today I work with kids like me. Not all of them survive. Not all of them make it out with someone like Warren in their corner. But when they look up at me and ask, "How did you get out?" I tell them the truth. Someone stayed. That is all it takes. Sometimes. One person who refuses to leave when it is inconvenient. One signature on a hospital form that says you are worth it. The last thing I read in that hospital was new legal guardian. Now I know what that really meant. It meant family isn't who raised you. It's who refuses to let you fall if you made it. This far, please hit the like button and leave a comment for Winds of Thought.